Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Exorcise Your Rights. We are with Naching T, Kassa, John Linwood Grant. Yes, this is actually what he looks like, the elusive John Linwood Grant. You finally get to see him. And no, you can't hide now. And we are talking about Sherlock Holmes, which the three of us wrote. These two are the Sherlock Holmes masters. They let me tag along. So welcome, you guys.
Hey.
Hi.
We've
I'm so pleased to be here.
As I say, we've already had so many shenanigans before this. We're all exhausted. So yeah, anyway, Sherlock Holmes. So tell me a little bit about both of you. Let's start with John because he's being so talkative. Tell me a little bit about yourself, what you do. If you don't mention Occult Detective Quarterly, I'm kicking you off the show. And then a little bit about your Sherlock Holmes story.
Okay. Well, Angela, it's delightful to be here, and I feel honoured. Just that so many people have voted. Oh no, that's another one. Right, where were we? I'm from Yorkshire in Britain, in the north of England, in fact, and I write stuff and I edit stuff, which is a bit wild, you know. What do I do? Who am I? I started being published at about 58, which is probably a little bit late. About 50 years too late, really. Because someone told me that you could make money selling short stories. So I thought, oh, all right then. So I wrote some short stories and I sold them. It's a gripping story.
Oh, sorry. Well, we forgot our shocked faces.
and then I wrote some more and I sold those as well. But somewhere along the way, I made a really stupid decision and started editing, which is a really bad idea. And the first thing I started editing was Occult Detective Quarterly, which is now Occult Detective Magazine, because it was impossible to do it quarterly. We might have got sued or something, I don't know. We're on a third publisher of an immensely doomed project, which makes no money. Well, not for us anyway. But on the other hand, we've published over 90 authors, paid about $10,000 out in fees. We're a paying market, so I'm quite proud of it in that sense. And it's from there I ended up editing anthologies. I don't do one-to-one editing or anything like that because that would do my head in completely. So I edit anthologies for various publishers, including, how many is it now? 4 volumes of Sherlock Holmes and the Occult Detectives, Belanger Books. We did a mega, the Book of Carnacki, which is the largest anthology ever done of William Hope Hodgson's Carnacki. Stories drawing on William Hope Hodgson's Carnacki character from 1910, which is quite exciting. And I've got 2 more that I'm in the middle of at the moment. If I weren't having to work out how my headphones function and things like that all the time, distracting me from the real stuff. I'm doing Alone on the Borderlands, which is an Edwardian weird anthology for Belanger Books, and we've had some really interesting submissions from all sorts of people at very different stages of their writing careers, you know, first timers and veterans. And there's some really, really weird stuff in there, which actually fits the brief. So it's going to be very hard to choose. I mean, I've just read a story by a female writer, which is quite harrowing, about a woman's life in that period, and it's, you know, really we're getting some very impressive stuff. And as soon as that's out of the way, I've got to edit A Darker Continent, which is about Europe during the Second World War, and which again is weird fiction. So both of these are original weird fiction anthologies,
Nice.
which is quite exciting. I've got my third collection coming out next year, hopefully, which is my a collection of stories about my gay 1970s art critic, based in London. Which, of course, I mean, naturally, I looked at what the studios are doing, Disney, all the big on Netflix, and I thought, what people really need is a middle-aged gay art critic in the 1970s. That is obviously the next big thing. It's called These Strange and Fragile Shells, and it's about Justin Margrave, who is a middle-aged gay art critic. But it's sort of the antithesis of Occult Detectives. I wanted to do something different. He's a character I really like, and basically he gets caught up in stuff, whether he wants to or not. And obviously, a lot of it tends to be related to the art field. You know, weird sculpture and strange paintings and bizarre stuff like that, and archaeological finds. But it is weird fiction. It's on the borderline of these things, and it's all original. So I'm looking forward to that coming out. That should be early 2024. And I'm putting to. Do you want me to stop now?
No. Keep going.
I'm putting together my Mama Lucy collection, which is about my 1920s hoodoo woman. And I'm delighted to say, although a million things in a writer's life don't turn out, is that a black-owned publisher has shown interest in it.
Nice.
And I've sent various copies of the stories to one or two female writer friends to get not sensitivity readers, but to get the perspective of how they see it. It's very much about the small magics of the world. It's hoodoo, not voodoo. It's about folk and communities. And basically, Mama Lucy trudges barefoot across the eastern seaboard of America, trying to produce small justices as she goes. It's pretty humanistic, and it's also a fairly hefty and unsubtle stab at the appalling Jim Crow laws.
Yeah.
You know, she can't change everything, but she can do what she needs to do. And importantly, because people get weird ideas, my interest is in fact literally, not I don't do it myself, literally, God knows, things like hoodoo and the cunning folk in Europe, and Italian traditions and South American traditions, and the witch sniffers of Africa. Not the big showy magics or powers, you know, but those people who work with villages and towns and struggle as they go to do the best they can. And in historical terms, they were also often midwives, herbal healers. They would do anything they could do for their local community or the community they were passing through. So Mama Lucy is one of those. She's very obstinate, very difficult, very black, and doesn't take rubbish from anybody, white or black.
So kind of like you, but not black and female, right?
Yes. That's it. Yeah, it's just me, you know. No,
cross-dressing.
But this sort of thing is very sensitive, quite rightly, and there's an awful lot of respect and stuff has to be considered. And what I did when this character came to me and I couldn't get rid of her, what happens, what she encounters, what she does, it's based on the writings of black authors and observers and sociologists, not on the fancy white revisions of stuff and the commercialization of it. and that was hugely important. It has to have an authentic voice, in as much as I can give it that. And I also I get annoyed by things in books and films. It's also, I suppose, a bit of a stab at the magical Negro concept, if I can use that word, because it's used as a trope concept. This idea that there's a wise black person who will turn up and make white people happy. You know, Mama Lucy does what she does for those who really need it. And she doesn't sit outside to help a worried stockbroker reconsider his marriage.
Yeah.
She's more interested in stopping a 15-year-old black kid get lynched.
Yeah.
Rather appropriately.
Yeah, in the grand scheme of things.
I hate some of the
Awesome.
tropes. I hate some of the tropes that have developed over the years. This is a genuine attempt, based on historical recounts and literature at the time, to portray a character I feel very strongly about.
I'm glad.
So-
We can't wait to see her.
We'll see. Well, the only good thing that's I found is that a number of black readers and indeed some hoodoo workers have enjoyed it for its degree of authenticity. So we'll see if we get away with it. I love her. I mean, I think she's absolutely brilliant. And I was going to put out another general collection, but I don't know whether I've got the time to do that. I've got enough material for. I was going to call it Mr. Linwood Entertains, and it would just be all sorts of cross-genre stuff. I mean, decent stories. I'm not going to put anything rubbish in, but decent story. Probably, unless I get really desperate. But I had a lot of stories. I had a lot of stories which don't fit anything, which is hence the Mr. Linwood Entertains. You couldn't bulk them together under a theme or a period or anything. But some of them are stories I really like. So I've been talking to a publisher about putting those.
Uh-oh. Can you hear?
John.
All right. Well, Naching, would you like to introduce yourself? I don't know if you can hear us or not, John, but just come back in the studio. And for everybody watching, thank you for your patience. This has been the cursed show. But Naching, can you please introduce? Oh, here he comes. He's actually in the studio twice now. Wait, his devices are not connecting. Oh, now he's gone.
Oh, darn
So
it.
we got tired of John Linwood Grant rhetoric, and so we just kicked him out of the show. Women's rights. Naching, would you like to please introduce yourself and then tell us about your story?
Okay. I'm Naching T. Kassa, and I'm a writer, a mother, a wife, and I belong to a lot of different things like the Horror Writers Association, the Mystery Writers of America, Sci-Fi and Fantasy Writers Association, and I'm also in a bunch of Sherlock Holmes clubs, and I am the talent relations manager for Crystal Lake Publishing. And
Awesome.
I've been and then my story is about, it's called The Riddle of the Red Tower, and it's about Sherlock Holmes and Watson are investigating a tarot card, where all of our stories are linked by tarot card, which is painted by Richard Dadd. And they have to go to Broadmoor to discover there's somebody who's been imprisoned unjustly, and they're going to find out what's going on. So that's what my story is about.
Tears, literal tears. Let me see if I can get Tom back up here. No, okay, his device is unconnected again. I don't even know what to say. That sounds interesting. Let me know what your inspiration was for that story.
Let's see. Well, I didn't even know who Richard Dad was until John brought Richard Dad up, and I researched him. And I researched Richard Dad, and then I was like, this was very just the whole story of Richard Dad, about how he had gone mad in the desert. They thought it might have been a sunstroke, and then he thought that the gods of Egypt were telling him what to do, and he ends up killing his father and attacking another passenger on the ship when he was trying to flee England, and that's when they caught him. But he did the most amazing miniatures that you've ever seen.
Yeah, and that's a true story. I just want to make sure everybody listening knows Richard Dad is real, and this part of the story is real.
Yeah, and without
John,
we without John.
Help! Now what's wrong with it? Frozen in time.
You'll never age now. This is like you're a digital vampire.
Well, can you still hear me?
Yeah, we can still hear you.
You told me to do this. The camera's working. I can't.
Oh my goodness. Well, and Naching does, because you're the talent relations person, so you're always sending me interviews for this show. I swear they're not all like this, Naching. I try to be professional. and there's John again. What kind of guests are you sending me?
Oh my gosh, it's like Monty Python.
So in a second now we're going to start singing like the spam song or something.
John's going to come back and we're going to be doing I'm a Lumberjack.
That's okay. Oh my goodness. So meanwhile, anybody who has stuck with us up to now, thank you. This book is definitely reading.
Oh.
He's back.
I thought I'd escaped.
Oh no, I told you in Facebook you can't hide. We know where you are.
All my programs keep crashing.
Before you disappear again, John, tell us about Richard Dad and why you suggested him as like kind of the theme for this anthology. Not the theme, but like what the inspiration behind it.
Never heard of him. Is he right?
Oh yeah, him.
Richard Dad. Yeah. Yes. I don't know why I suggested it, except that I quite like his work, but also he had the most bizarre story. Life, actual life. The strangest bit is that as a painter, he kept working for years while in asylums. And in fact, they encouraged it. I suppose the early sort of art therapy. And he was producing all sorts of magnificent works while, effectively in a cell, a gentle version of a cell, in building blocks where there were, serious criminals and people who were, probably irretrievably insane by the standards of the time. Mm-hmm. But it was partly because his episodes were so terribly specific. And I gathered a lot of the time he's actually quite, sort of chilled out. It wasn't terribly difficult. except for that he twice attacked people, so violently that one of them died.
Yeah, killing people. He was pretty cool.
So I mean, that was so bizarre that I've always wanted to do a little bit about him, and I can't remember why this happened when it was first suggested to me. Possibly by Naching. I already had the main female character. Was it you?
Oh yeah,
It probably was Naching. I'm going to blame her.
All right. Yes, but that sounds like a good idea. Let's gang up on somebody.
Her. Oh wait, her.
I had a character in the period which was required for the novellas for the collection, and I thought I had wanted for a while to find her further chapters. I had an idea of what happened to her life, as it were, over the next 30, 40 years from my novel, The Assassin's Coin, and even some various character notes and my version of files on her, which is things scribbled on a fag packet and something on one of the dog biscuit things, because I'm not very organised. And there was this whole period. I had her in 1908. And I had her in 1888. And this project fitted in the middle of that. So I thought, right. And in the end, I committed the terrible crime of introducing her to Sherlock Holmes. And in fact, they don't get on terribly well, which doesn't surprise me a bit. But she likes Watson. Reason, she thinks he's quite a genuine and affable, and she finds Holmes an absolute too clever for his own boots and picky and constantly criticising her. But she
much sums him up.
Well, yeah. But she offered the whole point about the character was, in brief, was that she's from a poor background, made her name as a sort of medium, a psychic. Came down to London and made her name, and this is, she experienced the streets in the original novel I wrote. And in this case, for society's sake, and to try and get away with this, she created a character, Madame Rostov, a pseudo-Russian. And it's Madame Rostov initially who contacts Holmes and says she's felt something is wrong. And that's it really. The rest of the it's quite a long novella. Mind you, I didn't count yours, so I've no idea how long any of them are really. The whole thing essentially begins after a few incidents when she warns Holmes, and she makes it clear that she doesn't really want to do this and doesn't really want to be involved in it. But she felt she couldn't just say nothing when she was receiving images which were not very nice, and that's the premise of the book. And then it all gets sort of complicated, and then unravels and gets complicated again as they find out what's behind both crimes which Holmes has come across and visions which she's had.
Oh, interesting.
An uneasy truce between Madame Rostov, who is really Catherine Whitehead, and Holmes, with I suppose Watson's the sort of rather nice chap in between who we'll get on with it. It'll be all right. Holmes isn't as bad as
And I have read both of your stories, and they are excellent. And I love your story, John.
Thank you.
Your story, they're excellent. Very excellent.
Aw,
I'm the only one who knows all three.
I was going to say, Naching is far too kind in regards to my story, because I kind of came into this like, yes, I can write Sherlock Holmes. Oh my God, look at all these rules. It has been a long time since I actually read Sherlock Holmes. Why can't they have gory death? So it was a huge, humbling experience for me, and I very much take my hat off to both of you as regular Holmes writers. That was, if you think you're going to just dance in and write Sherlock Holmes, you got another thing coming. Anybody who's watching this, do not try to write Sherlock Holmes. It's maddening. It will make you crazy. But anyways, it was, yeah. I'm excited to read all of these.
I've got enough stories for a Holmes collection as well. I never intended to write Holmes stories at all, but they get popular. It's bizarre. I don't understand this in a way. Just cut your own throat on screen here.
I was gonna say John is like, he likes pain. Obviously, he's one of those masochists.
I resign. The two things that astonished me, because I came from my own background, reading background and everything, is that Holmes stories and Cthulhu type stories are still major publishing genres and have, really fanatical fans, and some of them very well informed, better than the authors are half the time, which is scary. And people do like them. People are interested. And it is a challenge to write. I mean, the problem is it's a challenge to write Holmes pastiches which have anything interesting to add to either the character or the society or times. And it's getting increasingly harder, I think, to write Cthulhu type stories or Mythosian stories, which aren't just a rerun of everything we've read before. So
True.
So I did both. I did both because I'm stupid and people paid me. Oh. But no longer. If they watch this, I'll be off the list.
You were paid, John. You were paid.
I was paid. Yeah.
Tell me a little bit more about your story, Naching. How does yours connect? Because you are the only one in this room that knows both stories. How does yours connect with both of them?
Well, I think ours are all standalone. They're all pretty standalone. Mm-hmm. The only thing that really connects them is that connection with Richard's dad and the tarot cards. So each of us all have the tarot cards involved. And then, all these manuscripts were found in Broadmoor Hospital in 2019 in Dad's grave. And so, and then they were all set up for certain, like ours are American for the Collier's magazine, and John's is for the Strand. So, I mean, we all took what we saw and went with it, but if we're playing the game, then that's how it is.
Yeah, and
go on.
Oh, I was just going to say that's the real mind twisting caution here. If these people are crazy, they really believe in Sherlock Holmes in real life. No, I'm kidding. Help me when I get into. I mean, no, I find it amazing. I'm amazed by how much accuracy and justification, because it is almost like role playing to write Sherlock Holmes.
Mm. Yeah, it's a funny business. I mean, I do enjoy it sometimes. There can be the pleasure sometimes. Yeah, there can be the pleasure of putting a puzzle together and unpacking it and seeing whether there is anything which might. How can I put it? You have a canonical Holmes, but if you try to treat him as a human being with all these flaws and oddities, you can still explore some of his thinking and even his emotional state to some degree. You have to shoot off pretty wildly if you want to do anything dramatic. But you can have, I like writing subtle, disquieting stuff. So I do write some Holmes stories which I've liked, which have had him questioning or exploring things which were normally not in his area, his zone, his comfort zone. And I don't just mean occult stuff, but I mean interpersonal stuff and relationships and considerations on the society around him. And when you get into that, it can be quite enjoyable writing that sort of thing. On the other hand, you have to remember that most people who read a Holmes story also want a mystery and a solution. So welding, I should say wedding, but I basically it's welding. Well, welding those together can be quite difficult. Fortunately, I write this whole cycle of stories, the last Edwardian cycle. So I've had Holmes in 3, 4, maybe 5 times between 1890 and 19. What's the latest one I've done? I think I've taken him up to 1920. Where he's been, how can I put it, like a supporting character, or a background character who people are aware of, and in turn he's aware of, but doesn't necessarily involve himself with some of my characters. So I have quite a large sort of theatre of that period, that 40-year period, going on in my own particular timeline and series of events. A lot of it wound in with real historical events. I prefer to write work which reflects and slides around actual history. I don't like. I know some people love it, but I don't like writing sort of alternate world stuff. Most of mine are riffs on events from a different, real events, but from a different point of view, or unpacking what was behind them. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
I don't know what I was trying to say there. I've forgotten completely why I opened my mouth. But there you go. But it was jolly interesting what I did say.
Yeah, it was.
I was going to say, but you said it well.
You just have to try and link it up to something that might be of any relevance, you know.
I was hoping you'd bring up Edward Dry.
Well, I try not to as much as possible, and I'm stuck in a very odd position there as well, because Edwin Dry is probably the Deptford assassin is probably one of my most popular characters, and I am a character writer primarily. However, a consummate assassin with his peculiar nature, it's actually a character you can write very little about at most points, because for one thing, he never fails. He always succeeds in what he does, and what he does is often quite peculiar for very particular reasons. So you can't churn out loads of stories about people hiring Edwin Dry to kill someone, and then he does, and that's it. You know, I mean, you have about 300 stories all saying basically the same thing, and the only thing that would change is where he killed them and how. I envisaged him as a genuine Edwardian assassin. He has no set modus operandi. He doesn't go for any of this serial killer stuff. He doesn't kill for emotion or for personal reasons. And in fact, he has his own set of moral beliefs. He doesn't kill animals. He will never kill animals or children because he doesn't believe that they can have consented to evil, as it were. And he has strange retributive sort of activities if he dislikes what's happened. I don't know how to put that, except that if he's hired to kill one person, he does it. But if he doesn't like his employer, he may well go back and kill the employer. So you have to be rather careful. Yeah, well, exactly. You have to be rather careful. And I mentioned the Assassin's Coin novel. I mean, that is essentially about Madame Rostov struck Catherine Whitehead turning to Mr. Dry during the autumn of the Whitechapel murders, Jack the Ripper. And I think there's a phrase in there somewhere that she questions what she's doing, in a sense, setting a monster to take a monster down. And she knows that what she's doing in getting Mr. Dry interested at all is in fact wrong in its own way, and that it's she feels an enormous amount of doubt and guilt over that. So part of the novel is her life. A large part of it is her life and her struggles, and part of it is about Mr. Dry seeking Jack the Ripper. Um, and I think one of the only other things I should say about the book is that I have absolutely no interest in who Jack the Ripper was. I think he was either suffering from terrible mental health issues or very traumatized, and I don't like the idea of obsessing over him. The whole point about that book, and I wrote a larger double book with Alan Clark, which came together as 13 Miller's Court, which covers what's Mary Kelly, the woman who's called the last victim of Jack the Ripper, who covers her biography as well. Alan does it brilliantly, and then our two books intertwine. The point was we were writing about people, about the victims, about the women of the streets, about their lives, what they had to do just to survive, and what they faced in doing that. And the other side, the celebrity and the who was he and all that sort of stuff, was of no interest to us. We only cared about the people, what they suffered, what they faced, and what they were made to endure, the social conditions, the policing, and all that sort of stuff. And that was the absolute focal point of all our work together. And in the Assassin's Coin, Mr. Dry, he considers himself a journeyman. He has no interest in who Jack the Ripper is. At one point, the man even tries to tell him who he is. He says, "I don't care." I think there's a line which says the person suspected of being the killer, the Whitechapel killer, says, "Half London seeks me," and Mr. Dry looks at him, adjusts his hat, and says, "Half London seeks a clean toilet."
Oh my God.
You know, utterly dismissive. You don't matter to me. I don't think you're important, and I don't care. Your reputation, your attempts at celebrity or excitement are nothing.
Yeah.
You are just. And Mr. Dry considers himself to be an annoying amateur who's in the way and should be got rid of. And that's the Assassin's Coin, basically. The coin is the small amount of money which Catherine gives to Mr. Dry to commission him.
Excellent.
And
that
that's
sounds
why,
super interesting.
yeah, that's why
It's super. Actually, it's quite a good book, actually.
And that's why you should read John's books. People should read John's books. They're terrific.
Well, link in the descriptions. I will get those links. And not only have you seen John Linwood Grant on the video, we now have a face to the name, not just the video, the photo of the back of his head, which is what you normally get to see of John.
Well, I try to get.
But the links will be in the description. We have time for one more question. I feel like we've just kind of laughed through this whole show and we really haven't gotten a lot of content in, but so I apologize, but I hope you're laughing with us.
Isn't that a major improvement? Not on you, not on your show, but just generally on these podcast things, you know.
Yeah, exactly. So we weren't falling asleep. Good.
Pick a card, any card. I like distracting things, you know. I enjoy them.
We would have never been able to tell John, ever. I mean, like, I'm totally shocked.
John Linwood Grant, serious author.
Watch out, he'll destroy your podcast.
Yeah, that was right.
No, but I do.
That might have been an accident.
Yeah. I am curious, what is your involvement with tarot before this story that you guys both wrote? Like, were anything, or is this like an introduction to tarot for you, or just kind of like oh, that's cool, and you did some research and added it in there?
I have a bunch of decks. I have just ones that I have one from Labyrinth, the the
Oh,
movie.
nice. Yeah.
And then I have Supernatural, the TV show.
Oh,
And then
nice.
a regular one. So that I never took them seriously, but they're good to use for as far as the story.
Yeah.
So I kind of collect them. But yeah, that's about as close as I was to the tarot cards with that.
Yeah, about you,
Yeah,
John. Is that
literally.
your secret life? Is you're a
Oh,
tarot card
God, no.
reader?
God, no. I try to read which way the rhubarb stalks are going. The, I have a literary interest in how tarot was involved with the Golden Dawn and various people through the decades, as they've had different uses from their original purposes, actually playing cards. So the history of them and the literary applications of them and how they've been used in writing interests me. I'm pretty much a Yorkshire humanist, and I don't really use any of those sort of things. I mean, I've tried them all. I've tried I Ching and runes and all sorts of stuff, but it's not my habitual approach. I push the dog outside to see if it's raining and get on with it, really.
Well, there you
you,
go.
What about you, Angela?
Oh yeah, I do read tarot. I started it as just a curiosity, and then it's less about like telling the future, but more just about analyzing yourself. You know, because things come up, and then you're like, "Huh, well, that reminds me of this problem that I have. Then maybe I should approach it in a different way, like that kind of thing." So it's actually called tarot analytics.
Tool for reflection. I can see that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it is. I found it like incredibly eerie sometimes how spot on it will be. You know, that I'm like, oh, you know, like you should watch, like specifically one of them was you should watch yourself on social media, which I was kind of like, huh, that's pretty specific. Later that day, I did find myself in a situation where I got incredibly angry at somebody on a panel. I'm not going to divulge names. I'm like, don't divulge too much here. And I was actually going to call them out publicly as that was inappropriate, blah, 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 you know, like that kind of thing. And then, and then I remembered that reading and I was like, maybe I better think about it. And it turns out they were actually right. And the person, I'm very vague right now, the person that I thought that they were being problematic with, actually, there was reasons, like, you know what I mean? It was justified. So I was like, oh, I'm really glad I just didn't get on there with my righteous self and like put my foot in my mouth and like stomp on my own career a lot and, you know, completely snuff it out for no reason at all. Thank you, Tarot.
Did you get a card this morning which said the broken radio show inverted?
It does say, don't let John Linwood Grant on the show.
Yeah.
Oh no, I should have.
That's very wise. Yeah. Obviously works then.
Angela, I have a question. I have a question. First, I'll ask John. John, what do you think of the Sherlock Holmes movies? Do you have a favorite?
No. I am an enormous fan of Clive Merrison's radio adaptation.
Oh, those are terrific.
And I think his voice and characterization are almost perfect. And I love what Bert Coules did with the dramatizing the actual stories. I've interviewed Bert Coules, who did they did the whole run of everything, all Sherlock Holmes stories. And I think Clive Merrison, he actually looks a bit like my idea of Holmes as well. He's got a high dome forehead and a strong nose, and and I'll watch them. I'll watch the films now and again. Sometimes, and I sometimes watch the silly older ones as well, where they make a complete buffoon out of Watson, which is very unfair.
True.
Oh, Holmes, oh God, I bumped into a tree. Oh.
Save me.
I mean, that was very. I think that was quite unreasonable. So if I want
the war,
if I want dramatized Holmes, I tend to re-listen to the Clive Merrisons because they are just of such high quality. I think there's all the novels and all the short stories, and he gets the feel of Holmes, Holmes' moods and occasional petulance, and his sense of justice. He gets it over so well that when anyone asks me, who's your favourite Holmes, Clive Merrison, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that avoided answering the question. I feel quite well now. I did well there.
Do well.
Extra gold star. Yeah.
John is running for politics, everybody, and we think he's going to be a winner.
Well, if you'd had me on after I drank this bottle of wine, it would have been even more fun. I've hardly touched it yet. I think I need to trim my beard as well. So you get a nice little mirror here where you can sort of.
Well, I saw you doing your hair
Well, it looked as if I was bald, but the hair's under there. And with that on, with this thing. So I'm sorry. You can tell I'm terribly vain, because everybody really wants me to look cool.
Well, that's why I thought you were always facing away from the camera, is to hide, preserve. You can't just go banding about. This is not.
No, my face has got plenty to do, just staying in the right position. So I don't tend to show it off a lot, to be quite honest. I usually don't do this sort of thing. And the dogs are much better looking than me. So if I could have held Biscuit up to the camera, I would have far preferred that. But he's gone off to sleep under the duvet.
He's like, this show is a cursed show. I'm out. I want nothing to do with it.
Might be a bit of editing needed.
No, I think it should stand as it is.
All the bits of me in, you can cut that.
Oh no, I was gonna say, if we edit all of the tomfoolery out of this show, there is no show. It's like a little blip of Naching and Angela and hello, and we're gonna talk about Sherlock Holmes. Beep, we're done.
I think it's great.
I do know why Naching asked that question, and I feel like she was kind of pointing at me because I have a karmic penance to pay. Because when I wrote this, I very much struggled to write Sherlock Holmes. I was very humbled by Sherlock Holmes. He's really good at that with people. He likes humbling people. Yes, and so I kind of came in oh yeah, I can write anything. Just give me. Wait, how many words? That was my reaction, to the word count of this. And then I started writing, no problem, I got this. Oh wow, this is really hard. And so Naching was also editing, and she made the comment that this reminds me of who's in that movie?
Robert Downey Jr.
Yeah, Robert Downey Jr. version of Sherlock Holmes. And I went, oh, I hated that movie. And I remember making everybody around me suffer for a month, probably, because I was like, and it was wrong because of this. And the way he turns Watson into a bumbling idiot was not right. And canon. Even though obviously I don't know jack shit about canon, Sherlock Holmes canon, I have just realized after writing this. But yeah, so this is my payment. This is my karmic payment of bitching about it so much.
I'll tell you what we actually enjoyed was that I just remembered. My partner and I watched that Enola Holmes, the two Enola Holmes.
Oh yeah,
oh
yeah. And
those are good.
Not worrying about authenticity or anything. We thought they were rather enjoyable, rather neat.
I got to see those.
In
I
fact,
will say,
I think I enjoyed them more than the Robert Downey Jr. epic ones. These are quite neat and quite peoply.
I will say we apologize, Robert Downey Jr., if you wind up watching this. It wasn't your acting, it was the writing. We'll just say it was the writing. It was those damn writers.
I'll apologize to him when he buys some of my books.
Yeah. Buy our books.
I'll apologize to him if he watches this.
And there you go, everybody. We have called out Robert Downey Jr. as being the worst Sherlock Holmes ever. Well, maybe not ever, but yeah.
No, there's worse. There's far worse.
I will say my favorite is Benedict Cumberbatch. I probably have a little bit of a crush on him as a nerd crush. So I do like him. I see Naching's over there like, disapprove.
Oh, my disapproving face. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, we were saving that for when John came in, but
I'm just worried that my head's on at an angle. That, or I need to get a new computer chair, which is entirely possible.
On that note, I think it's time for us to say goodbye. Thank you so much. And like Sherlock Holmes, this is supposed to be a half-an-hour show. We've drawn it out to 51 minutes.
But I wasn't in half of it. I kept disappearing by accident.
We had half for Naching and half with John. Thank you, everybody. Thank you guys for being on the show. I do want to have both of you back at some point. I think I can handle that.
I've got loads to talk about. Hi, I'm a serious author. Please listen to me.
We're going to put these on TikTok. I swear to God, I'm putting that on TikTok. I don't even have a TikTok account. I'm going to make a TikTok account so I can put that on it.
Oh my gosh, I do. I want to put it on there.
I will send you the clip.
I can barely use a hammer and chisel, so TikTok's way beyond me.
Do we have your permission, John? Yeah.
Oh,
okay.
Use what you want. I'm a grand old gentleman of the horror medium, you know. I once helped Ramsey Campbell take a picture of a seagull. Status, huh?
On that note, thank you everybody who endured this show with us, and I hope you will go get the Sherlock Holmes book, which is honestly way more serious than this show, I feel like. And that link is in the description. And with that, we'll see you next week. Thank you both of you for being on the show.
Absolute pleasure.
Thank you, Angela.